Good morning, everyone, and thank you all for joining us today. My name is Rashmita, and I'm the event planner for Microsoft Reactor India. This session will run over the next 60 minutes, including Q&A. But before we begin today's session, please take a moment to read our code of conduct. We are all here to learn together, so please be respectful of other people's views, understanding of differences, being kind and considerate in the way you engage. The chat section will be open throughout, and we do encourage you all to participate. So please feel free to drop all your questions in the chat section. Let me bring in Bala, our speaker for today's session.
Yeah, hi, good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? Is it clear and
Yes, Bala,
audible?
we can hear you. Yes,
Okay,
you're clear and audible, and your presentation is up. Thank you.
thank you. Yeah, let's go ahead. Um, so, who am I? I'm a passionate SRE, a Linux enthusiast, and I worked in a bunch of MNCs. I'm an Avid runner and a cyclist. One time I was contributing to MicroK8's add-ons and Minikube add-ons. I'm a Kubeastronaut, and you can reach me on the social handles like the X or the B Sky here. Who this talk is for. So this talk is for the platform engineers who are building the infrastructure at multiple application teams, application developers who wants resiliency and safety for their deployments, irrespective of whether it's a canary or a blue-green deployment, and anyone wants to grow their skills by learning a single API which can be used to configure dozens of different products or the services in their work environment. Okay, so what's the agenda in today's plate? So I'm going to cover about the service and types that's available in Kubernetes, and an overview of Ingress service and why Gateway API is far better than Ingress, and some of the open source initiative that come from CNCF like Gamma initiative. I mean, it's SIG network initiatives and Gateway API implementation on Azure. That's on AKS. How it can be done with a small demo. Uh, Plus, I will add a bit of a migration plan if you have another vendors like Kong or any other ingress controllers you're using. You can add use this migration plan and try to use that. And a couple of tools around the Gateway API which can be like an extension and give more power or enhance the power of Gateway API comparing to uh, current ingress controllers. Okay. I won't be able to see the chat now, but I'll try to answer as much as possible or give whatever information I can. Okay. To start with, the services most of us knows or any CKS here, they will know or they would have come across. The services are of four types. One is the cluster IP. If you want to expose any service in Kubernetes, it's typically done on this way. Either it's a cluster IP, node port, external namespace, load balancer, and the headless service. Based on the use case, this service types will be used. However, that's not scalable when the traffic comes from the outside world to the Kubernetes cluster, any AKS or EKS or GKE or whichever vanilla Kubernetes if you use. If you want to bring the traffic from the outside to the inside, um, so load balancer cannot grow or the humongous amount of traffic cannot be handled. So that's where something like Ingress controller comes in picture, where you have HTTP and HTTPS. That traffic protocols being used, it's in the layer 7. So typically a service rule we definition we do with the external HTTP traffic, and it needs an ingress controller that runs inside the cluster and which does the SSL termination, load balancing, name-based virtual hosting, whatnot. It also has the certificate configuration. So an ingress works based on the ingress controller. So as I mentioned earlier, it's on the layer 7, so it's only HTTP and HTTPS. And most of the time, it's based on what sort of ingress controller we are using. If you use Nginx, it has its own standard. If you use Traffic, it has its own standard. If you use Contour, this will have an own standard. Azure has its Ingress controller has its own standard. So we cannot migrate or port our services from one uh, Ingress controller to another one. So it will be a tedious process, right? Um, so just a bit of a refresh. Ingress controller typically supports HTTP and HTTPS protocol, where if we mention the path type as a prefix for a backend service, and like this in this example service, when I hit it, it goes to the respective service based on the annotations what we define. So the annotation also changes based on the ingress controller what we are using, and the syntaxes are much wider, and the amount of human errors are more, or a misconfiguration on configuring ingress is more, right? Um, so what type of ingress? There are three types of ingress typically considered: name-based virtual hosting, fan-out based, and single service. Um, what are the limitations with Ingress? As I mentioned, there are more than 25 implementations currently there, and not all extensions can be portable. Uh, and there are no permission based model that are sufficient for many ingress providers. And most importantly, Ingress project from a CNCS perspective, it's frozen from the version of Kubernetes 1.19. If you look at the screen at the bottom, you will see that the feature tag itself, it says after the version 19, it's no updates are going there. All the new updates are going to this new initiative called Gateway API. Um, and Ingress is not ideal for multi-tenant or multi-role environment, right? So, so where is my app? Most of us would have seen this meme somewhere in social media, or anywhere in Instagram, or in Twitter, Facebook, wherever you are, on LinkedIn, right? So if you look at the load balancer, Ingress, kube proxies, service mesh, sidecars, and applications. And what's going to change now with the Gateway API? It's going to replace this service mesh kind of thing, and it has the capability. I will explain what are the other capabilities that comes part of the Gateway API, and Gateway API would replace those things, but still you have the kube proxy service that's underneath components will be running along with the Kubernetes cluster. So why Gateway API? It's a next gen of Kubernetes Ingress and service discovery or a service mesh API. Um, so this was started in 2019 in a bunch of open source contributors get together from Google, Kong, and many other companies. The open source contributors, they get together in 2019 KubeCon, and they came up with an ideal solution to avoid the bottlenecks what we have seen before. Like 25 implementations of ingress control. Every implementation has own standards. So how do we bring a common one? And every time if you want to add a route to your service, you need to approach an infrastructure provider. So yeah, Kubernetes administrator in your company, right? So if I want to reduce those things, how can I empower an application developer do his own application routes or something? Let's say I set up a CI/CD pipeline. With that, I just the application developer can push that YAML files and deploy. So they don't need to rely on the infrastructure providers or platform engineers for it, right? So that's where the Gateway API helps here to fragment the things, and it empowers the application developers. Okay, it improves the resource models, and it's protocol agnostic. Unlike Ingress, it's only support HTTP and HTTPS, whereas Gateway API support multiple protocols, which includes TCP, UDP, TLS, WS, uh, whatnot. And it has a lot of built-in features that enhance security. Like I can have OPA policy which can control my ingress to go particular my request can go to particular service. Okay, and most importantly, ingress with ingress you cannot do a cross namespace connection, service to service connection. So it has to be in the same namespace. Whereas in Gateway API, it's possible to have a cross namespace support. It's ability to route traffic to one service in a different namespace to another one. And the session persistence is good one, good feature with Gateway API. Okay. This is a typical flow of a gateway API. You can have multiple gateways defined for every service, and one gateway can used for HTTP, another gateway for TCP UDP, another gateway for a gRPC protocol. If service wants to have a gRPC protocol, it can use it. Okay, and what are the objects that nicely comes? It comes with an object like TLS route, HTTP route, gRPC route, UDP, TCP routes. So it supports both layer 7 and layer 4. Okay. Another thing is it supports HTTP 2 as well. So irrespective of whichever vendor you're using, the standard syntax that's going to be same thing for everyone. It's not the standard defined by any on their own, or a proprietary will not be there. There could be a small extension or a feature that could be from a proprietary one. However, a basic gateway API, it'll be a standard flow and a standard syntax that will be used. This is one of the typical example of HTTP query param based matching, and you can see the weightage. Based on the weightage, I can define like 90% goes to particular service for my backend reference, and 10% goes to a particular service. Another reference I can go send it to another service with the same HTTP route. Another important aspect of Gateway API is it has a lot of policies that can empower your service. Like I can do a timeout policy, I can set a retry policy or a health check policy before the service hits the pod, if the pods are healthy or something. All this configuration we can do. Even sometimes the hostname certificates will be different from the load balancer certificates. So we can configure that kind of information in the TLS policies. Yeah, this is the difference between Ingress versus Gateway API. As I mentioned, only Ingress supports, it has the very limited information, and it supports only 3 types of protocol at the layer 7, whereas Gateway API, it's more powerful in traffic management, and it's a lot of flexible extension mechanism that has the documentations can be found in the Gateway API spec here in this slide. It's pretty open, and there are a lot of implementations, use cases, and they have a plethora of information about how to test kind of thing if you want to build on your own as well. Okay. This is another table which I created. One is the protocol support, extensibility, routing model I mentioned. You can define a fine-grained routing to HTTP or TCP routes, and TLS I mentioned. And the use cases for a complex traffic management or microservice, or for an example, in your company, dev has multiple dev teams are there. We can use the Gateway API to route the traffic instead of creating ingress for each teams. Okay. And what's changing in terms of traffic when you implement this? If you look at here, the traffic management with Ingress, as I said earlier, it's the types are different. One with Istio, it's different. One with console, it's different. Ambassador, it's different. Contour, it's different. Whereas when we move into Gateway API, it will be a single syntax. The kind will be same in an YAML file. In terms of security modeling, Ingress, Gateway API provides a robust security for access control, like the cross namespace boundary we can create, and RBAC personas we can define, like an infrastructure provider or a cluster provider, operator, or a application provider. You can define that one. So not everyone can access. A fine-grained access control we can do, and even a reference grant can be given to a service with the secrets and the routes for the backend to be accessed. Um, uh, what are the if you want to limit an access to a particular service, this is the one which I said earlier. For if I want to limit access for a particular namespace or for a gateway class, I can use OPA policies to block it. So another important, now the world is moving towards AI and the LLM modeling kind of thing. Gateway API has some extensions which are coming now. Their model aware routing can be done and serving priority to the respective thing. Um, this is in the beta space, I think. So it will come into the picture. I mean, when it comes to GA, it will be very helpful when we develop the folks who are building LLMs. It will be useful for them. And another initiative from the same Gateway API community is Gamma initiative. So, does it going to replace my service mesh? Possibly, yes, after a long time. However, in current scenario, it does tame the service mesh capability also. So this started in 2022 to use the Gateway API for service mesh implementation. Um, Okay. Coming to the Azure's perspective, so how Azure has implemented Gateway API, they use the application gateway for containers, very cluster-specific resource, which deployed two resources in the Azure. One is the front end and the association for that one. The front end is the entry point for the traffic, like in this diagram, and there is an association. One-to-one mapping that is done to an Azure subnet that has been delegated. Okay, what are the advantages of using this? It's natively supported in AKS Azure platform, and Microsoft support and SLAs are there. Better performance, and if you want a real-time routing, adding or anything, auto scaling, availability zone resiliency kind of thing, it's all easy to implement if you have a AKS platform. Um, Another thing which we need to watch as a platform engineer or an SRE, about the cost of the load balancer, what we are creating, and the amount of time we are spending. Um, if you are in a green field or something, it's easy to go directly and implement this stuff. But if you are in service that is running, so we need to plan something. There is another slide which I'm going to show about the migration plan, what you need to think through, and how do you plan for it. Then go step by step and move towards the Gateway API. Okay, so I'll go through a small demo. I'll connect to my cluster. Uh, so the documentation is pretty clear from Azure Application Gateway for containers, and you can see the information of how does this works kind of thing here. Rather than I explain what are the features they support, so you can see what feature is required for you and read through this documentation. So for this demo, I already installed this application gateway controller for containers. and I have set up the AKS cluster as well. Um, and I choose bring my own deployment, where there are two ways it can be done. Either it's managed by Azure, or you can bring your own controller kind of thing. So in this one, I created the resources that are required for front end and the association which I was mentioning, and delegated a subnet association for that VNet. Then the identity permissions I have already given for my AKS cluster. Um, Now I will show how to deploy a backend MTLS with an application gateway for containers. So typically, if you look at here, there are two clients here, and they want to talk to a service inside this. So the application gateway, it has all the information about what sort of certificate and how do I access my backend. Okay. Um, so let me run this. Wow. I'm not sure. Great. My demo god is failing today. Let's see. Okay, let's move ahead and this. I'm just creating a front end. Okay, something is seriously. I don't know why it's failing. In the interest of time, I would request you to go through this documentation. So once you have your own application gateway for containers is available, then you can directly go to this backend TLS, backend MTLS for the application. An example here, you deploy the YAML file that has all the services. It's a simple allowable service, and create a gateway. Uh, Once the gateway is created, you will get a message, or just check with the get command, kubectl get command, to see if it is accepted. If it's a valid one, then you will see the listener is accepted. Uh, then create the HTTP route for this MTLS application on 443 port. Um, so once this is accepted, you will be able to see. Then you need to deploy the TLS certificate. That's for you can create. It will create a secret and CA bundle. Um, Once it is accepted, you will get the FQDN, and you just call it. It'll give you a hello world output. Okay. Let me go to the slides again. So So if you want to troubleshoot, yeah, kubectl get YAML file and you see the status, and it will report a lot of common problems for, and the specific documentations are in this slide. It's all in the Gateway API SIG K8IO. You will be able to find it. Then so if you want to migrate, what is that one? So you need to create a process to identify which service or the which team, or create a strategy for it. What I want to migrate. Then confirm the observability strategies as well. What if I have an incorrect service labels are there, or SSL certificate issues are it's going to expire kind of thing. Have this information ready, or my endpoint, if my endpoint fails or something, what I am going to do. So which implementation variation I am going to do. If I'm in Azure, I'll use this. If I am in something else, I'll use something else, right? So create that implementation variation, do the thorough testing of it, and figure out the personas in your organization who is going to own the gateway API. Okay, and best thing is leverage the community best practices. You can go to GitHub issues, the discussions in the Slack kind of thing. Uh, then you can start with Ingress to Gateway. Some of these tools like Ingress to Gateway and Gateway CTL, like kubectl, Gateway CTL is there. And if you want to have a policy management, you can use policy machinery as well. Uh, so Ingress to Gateway helps to translate the CRDs to Gateway API. There are multiple Ingress providers now it supports. You can see GCE, Istio, OpenAI, or even Kong. Ingress is coming up with their own gateway API as well. Sorry, Nginx is going to come with their own gateway API as well. Yeah, this is a small demo. This I can play it because it's a recorded one. So you can see if I do kubectl describe our service for our HTTP bin service, I have this ingress for it on the address 172.18.7.110. So when I use the tool ingress to gateway API and pass on this information, uh, provider as ingress nginx, so it will convert into a gateway and gateway a HTTP route that is required for this particular thing to be implemented. Okay. Next tool is Gateway CTL. It's instead of we use kubectl commands, we can use the Gateway CTL. It has plethora of options. Also, it provides a graph what my implementation looks like. You can use this and get the overview of where my service or where the flow is going underneath, right? So you can get those information, or you can get output for a very specific protocol. You can do it. Okay. Yeah, this is some of the examples. You can it writes the summary, and if there are potential issues or existing fixes, if you want or something, the information it provides very well. Okay, if you want to analyze some YAML files before implementing in the production. The last one, which I mentioned about the policy machinery, so you can use it for defining your DNS policies, TLS policies, rate limiting policies. Before you implement, you can do a dry run and see what's happening. Okay, I believe it's bit of overwhelmed with features and stuff. I couldn't show the demo, but you can try it on your Azure account and see what's happening. Okay. um, yeah, and where do you find all the information? You can find all the information here in this places. So you can take a screenshot of this and see what's and go to the Slack community and ask questions there. They'll be happy to help you. Yeah, that's all I have it. Rashmita.
Yep. Thank you.
Yeah, or
Thank you
any
so
question?
much, Bala. We don't
Yeah,
have any questions at the moment, but I think let me just share your handle also in case if anybody wants to reach out to you later. So
yeah,
there we go. So folks, in case if you want to reach out to Bala for any questions or maybe you want to connect with him, so please feel free to do so. And yeah, I think thank you so much, Bala, for hosting this session, and thank you all for joining us today. Please visit Microsoft Reactor websites for more upcoming session, and also we would appreciate your feedback on today's session as it will give us, uh, to understand what kind of sessions that you would require. So we'll curate accordingly. And so for that, please scan the QR code and do share your feedback. The event ID is 24857. Thank you all once again and enjoy the rest of your day.
yeah. Thank you.